I'm watching a show right now. It's on the War of 1812. It started very much the same as the Revolutionary War, actually. We like to say that the Revolutionary War started over the Boston Tea Party. Well, no, that was actually the founding act. That was where we said enough is enough. But the fight was actually over was, well, it was over the taxes, like they said. But we got a very famous man by the name of John Hancock. That's the guy with the biggest signature on the Constitution. Well, actually, the Declaration of Independence. Um, Neither here nor there. But the point here is these things have an effect on us to this day. Westminster Abbey may not seem that important. Every English monarch since 1066 was coronated at Westminster Abbey. Every one of them. 1066. Imagine that. About 46 years short of being 1,000 years old. Westminster Abbey had a new addition put on. This thing was built almost 1,000 years ago. They built a new addition over the west entrance, and above that entrance is a statue of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He is considered one of the basically a 20th century saint according to the Church of Great Britain. The War of 1812 kind of started similar. It started with British attacking and raiding American vessels and taking whoever they wanted. Impressing them is what they called it. Are you impressed? Where do your words come from? We've got words that common usage has taken over its original meaning and its original intent. Then we have the law, which takes a lot of those words and meanings and retranslates them into a legal definition, which is often quite different from the original definition. Pretty soon you get words like impressed. Are you impressed? Are you impressed yet? Impressed today is more akin to the word astounded. Impressed then meant being forced into military service at gunpoint. We here in America don't look at Napoleon the way that the British do, or the French, or the Russians. They look at Napoleon much in the same way that we look at Hitler. Why is that? Well, that has to do with, first of all, us being friends with Napoleon. See, Napoleon was allied with Spain, and the Napoleonic Wars lasted for like a little over 2 decades, I believe. In the War of 1812, the British were busy fighting with Napoleon. He was French, of course. And we had a free French force, I guess. They really fizzled out quick, though. And I guess the dynamics I'm trying to explain is that we really had a ragtag bunch of nobodies who were fighting a war over nothing that really didn't need to be fought. We were actually having issues with pirates at the time. In the Revolutionary War, part of what we try to hide today from the American public is that America was literally founded on piracy. Our very first Navy was a bunch of bootleggers, you know? A lot of these guys literally were paid in whiskey. I don't know how to explain to you how different an economy is when it's run on alcohol. But we look at it today, what do people spend their money on? A lot of alcohol. You want to impress the ladies, get some alcohol. You want to impress your friends, get some alcohol. That's very much an American thing to this day, isn't it? A lot of our founding fathers, they were beer makers, like a whole bunch of them. George Washington, he thought it would be a good idea, for a while at least, if we changed the entire American economy over to goods trading and have it all be based off whiskey. But what they were able to do, because what you got to take a look at is that all of these people were upper statesmen, all of them. These were all people who were basically lords and ladies in their own right, just based on the fact that they were granted and owned property in the United States. Now, this is all property that's supposed to be property of the king, right? All right, one moment. Um, all right, I don't have what I thought I did. George Washington. He, of course, he was born in the United States, but he also fought in the British Army. He fought against the French. A lot of people don't know that. We don't pay much attention to American history here. The War of 1812 is like a fart in British history. Right now, what I'm watching, they're missing a lot of stuff that's pretty important. Like pirates, they were known for being for each other. Queen Anne's War. What did Blackbeard name his ship? Queen Anne's Revenge. That's right. And Blackbeard, like many of the pirate crews of his day, they were all people that just a few years before that had been all shooting at each other for a bunch of royal assholes. Back then, same as now, the royalty in Europe was all related. And a bunch of people killed each other over a bunch of rich fucking punks. Just like today. It hasn't changed much. We also have the religious thing being used to continually murder people. This has not changed since Christianity was formed. I mean, just look at the sheer quantity of carnage and bloodshed. A lot of people want to talk about how terrible the Colosseum was. I mean, the Colosseum wasn't even originally called the Colosseum. It was, sorry, called the Flavian Amphitheater after the guy who had it built. The Colossus that was outside of it when we went in there and named the damn thing, we named it for the Colossus that was standing next to it, which was actually this thing that the Emperor Nero, who was in love with himself, had built. Um, Later on, it was, well, obviously torn down. It's not there anymore. Napoleon, he and the French were able to, and I don't believe that it was entirely Napoleon. I believe that it was mostly the royals, but the French went completely fucking broke. They went broke funding a war, fighting a Cold War with the British. The American Revolution, all of the stuff that the French just kept on sending us, all this expensive stuff. Benjamin Franklin, this old ass man over there speaking French, flirting with the ladies, the high society ladies. I mean, that's basically what he did the whole time he was over there, speaking for us and flirting with women and drinking alcohol. Some of his publications, as well as other publications during the Revolutionary War, show that they used the Pirates of the Caribbean, the the people who fought back against all three royal powers and almost won. That's one thing that none of our history books talk about. How badly the British, the French, and the English got their asses thoroughly fucking kicked. The pirates they weren't just taking out merchant vessels. If they were taking out a merchant vessel, it was. I should explain a little bit about Queen Anne's War. Um, there was a series of wars where it was the French, the English, and the Spanish all shooting each other up. And they pretty well stayed busy with that. And there was a bunch of privateers. These are basically uh, people who are mercenaries of the sea, so to speak. They're allowed to raid merchant vessels and stuff of the enemy, with permission of the crown, of course. Well, when they finally decided they were all sick of fighting the war, they really let a lot of those sailors down, didn't pay them, pissed a lot of them off. They're like, we just gave up our lives, and you're telling us that not only is the war over, that you forced us into because you guys had a fucking argument with your goddamn cousin at a fucking dinner party. By the way, look that up. So right after America becomes a country, I mean, we're fighting um, against these guys. Now, there was a ship called the El Cazador, and we're going to look this up. It means the hunter. I'm going to read you about this ship because it is important. It was found just a few years ago off the about 50 miles off the coast of New Orleans. El Cazador ship. It says the El Cazador was a Spanish brig that sank in the Gulf of Mexico in 1784. In the 1770s, the Spanish Louisiana Territory's economy was faltering due to sorry, um, was faltering due to paper money that was not backed by silver or gold. Carlos III, King of Spain, decided to replace the worthless currency with valuable Spanish silver coins. They came from Mexico, by the way. On the 20th of October, 1783, Charles III of Spain sent her on a mission to bring much needed hard currency to the Spanish colony of Louisiana in order to stabilize the currency. The ship sailed to Veracruz, Mexico, where she was loaded with approximately 450,000 Spanish reales. Yep. I actually had a coin from that ship, by the way. It says, to be more precise, she was loaded with silver Spanish coins, mostly 8 reales or pieces of 8. It carried 400,000. By the way, a piece of 8, it's a 8 reales coin. You chop it into 8 pieces. That's just because it was the easiest way to chop it. It's the easiest way to split it up. Um, Also, part of the reason for splitting it up that way is because that silver was worth something. You would actually use it. Um, for different purposes on board a ship. Some of the earrings that you see and stuff that pirates had, they were actually pounded out of a piece of eight. A piece of eight would be 1/8 of that coin. Literally, a sliver of that coin. You chop it up into 8 pieces like a pizza. Let's see. It says carried 400,000 silver pesos and another 50,000 pesos worth of smaller change of various dates. At 1 ounce to the peso and 12 troy ounces to the pound, that's 37,500 pounds of silver. King Carlos III enlisted his most trusted captain, Gabriel de Campos y Pineda, to command the ship. On 11th of January 1784, she sailed for New Orleans and was never heard from again. Spain's attempts to locate the ship were unsuccessful, and in June 1784, Alcazar was officially listed as missing at sea. A trawler called the Mistake and Captain Jerry Murphy found it in 1993, August 2nd, 1993. Because of that, the economy faltered in Louisiana and Florida and that whole area. And as a result, the Spanish were forced to sell the land. They sold all of their holdings, most of their holdings, west of the Mississippi to the French, and the French sold it to us, and that's known as Louisiana Purchase. We gone over enough of this shit yet? Probably not. All right. Point here is, at every point, all of the land is owned. It's not owned by anybody who's working the land. It's not owned by the people who are even living on the land. It's owned by a bunch of rich assholes who were tired of being told by other rich assholes what to do, but still wanted to tell you what to do. They wanted to buy and sell our lives, and they never stopped. There are always going to be people who are going to try to do that. And the difference between them getting away with it, which is what we got now, and living in a better world is, are we going to accept it? Martin Luther, he was considered the first Protestant, correct? That's the man for which Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was named. Well, he was obviously, since his name was Junior, he was actually named after his father, and his father was named after Martin Luther. Martin Luther was burned at the stake for being a witch by the Catholic Church. Martin Luther also was a Catholic priest. It really goes into a whole bunch of religious practices and things of that nature that really get complicated. And then there's the cruelty of the royals. If you guys look into the history of the British Empire, just in the last 50 years, they've done some pretty fucking horrible things. A lot of the stuff that the British have done in my lifetime, I literally, I turned 40 in October. A lot of the things that the British have done in my lifetime are, well, the British military and parliament, I should say. They're on par with Nazi laws and Nazi regulations and Nazi tactics of the 1940s. It's fucking creepy. The United States has come pretty darn close. I didn't think that Britain could beat us on that. I really didn't. But also, I've never lived in Great Britain. I've never lived in the UK. I don't even know what the proper term for them is anymore. We call them the British Empire. The monarchy doesn't really hold any actual power, so it's not technically an empire. The War of 1812 gave us a whole lot of stuff that we want to talk about, but we don't all remember where it came from. They're like, oh, the Constitution, isn't that one of the ships we stole from the British in the Revolutionary War? No, it's not. Matter of fact, we should read up on the USS Constitution. Pretty interesting story. Matter of fact, the techniques that were used to build the USS Constitution and her sister ships, the first of which was the USS United States, they they had a different set of vertical ribbing. Elizabeth Salinas typed the British monarchy is too damn rich. They're actually not. They're not. The British monarchy owes a lot of money. That's part of the reason they gave away all their power. They owe a lot. The amount of money that the British monarchy still owes for the Napoleonic Wars is just, it's phenomenal. I am surprised that Great Britain and Russia have not gone to war over that, because there's been times where they were looking for an excuse. Britain just never paid up. Much like the United States, though. The United States, what do they pay with? What do they pay for everything with? Is it gold bullion? No. We don't pay with gold bullion. We made the British pay with gold bullion before we entered World War II. We made them pay entirely in gold. Worked out for us. British spent a lot of time raping the world of their resources. From India to the Philippines, Australia, New Zealand. The British really did rape the entire world for its gold resources. And it wasn't just the gold resources that they were after, I get that. But it was World War II really helped America to build a good, solid gold base par excellence. You know, I mean, the British can never, ever make up for what they gave us. Ever. Now, they were able to buy a lot of their gold back because here in America, we made a law that made it so that Americans weren't allowed to have gold anymore. You had to turn it in. You were not allowed to own gold in America. And we had a president who was actually pretty famous who established the American gold standard, saying that every American ounce was worth $35. Well, what's it at today? America released the gold standard in the 1970s. They did not make a big public announcement about it, but the British sure the fuck did. And as a result, the British got to buy back a whole bunch of their gold at bargain basement fucking prices. When they made that public, it dropped the price of gold worldwide. And the only people that thought to buy up our gold were mostly British people who had a whole bunch of money. Just like America's founding fathers, they were basically rich British bitches, whether they were born here or there. They had titles and land and were esquired. Esquire means that you own land. If you don't own land, then you basically own the people on it. You get to tell those people, hey, I want you to give me this and this and this and this because it's my land, and you have to pay me because it's my land, and you're on my land. Like, Who the hell gave you that land? You gonna tell me God did it? No, dude, your fucking grandpa murdered a whole bunch of Native Americans. We're not fucking stupid. And now you want to be a douchebag to me because you're the grandson of a fucking murderer? Hell no. And then you want to tell me that it's all the Native Americans' fault that they don't have that land anymore. No, I'm not going to fucking bite that. Now, the opening shots of the War of 1812, that's a few years after we've been a country. You know, we've been a country for a while. Of course, this is while the rest of Europe is fighting with Napoleon. So, I mean, they really don't have a lot of troops to send over here, nor do they really fucking give a shit. I mean, the War of 1812 really could have been taken care of with a fucking apology letter. No joke. Just leave fucking American ships alone. The British got a big head when they went pirate hunting, though, and they let that stay stuck to their head for far longer than they should have. When we were in the War of 1812 with our pompous heads, we thought we were going to go up to Canada and give Canada freedom. Canada was already a free fucking country by that point. The British really didn't give a shit about Canada. They're like, hey, you're going to send us some beaver furs? Cool, dude, we'll make some hats. A lot of the situation that we got right now, stemming from the War of 1812 and America getting its ass thoroughly stomped. We got the USS Constitution out of it, which is a ship. What's more important, that ship or the document for which it was named? I'd say that document. You can see the USS Constitution. It is in Boston, Massachusetts. And if I am not mistaken, it is actually moored in the dry dock where it was built. Um, Elizabeth Linus type taxpayers in the United Kingdom are paying more money than ever for the royal family. The latest Sovereign grant accounts show that the monarchy cost 67 million or 86 million dollars, 67 million pounds or 86 million dollars in 2018 to 2019. Holy dear God! The British pound is worth more than the American dollar now. I didn't know that. I knew that the whole European Union friggin' dollar was doing pretty good for a while there, but I thought you guys was pulling out. And by the way, that's a terrible method. She can still get pregnant. That's a bad joke. I shouldn't have. No, that's a fucking good joke. It's a good joke because it's fucking true. And it'll make you think. It's kind of like if you want to train people not to urinate on your toilet, say, if you sprinkle when you tinkle, please be neat and wipe the seat. We aim to please. You aim to please. Anyway, Elizabeth Linus type Queen Elizabeth is worth an estimated $530 million, and that's just her cut of the royal family's total fortune. They used to say the sun never set on the British Empire because they had so many territories at one time. Are you guys sick of royalty? Are you sick of paying the royals? You might not even be allowed to say that over there. I don't know. Um, a lot of what I was about to get into was actually Muslim. That was kind of the point of the very beginning of the War of 1812. This show I'm watching here, it's about the War of 1812, and it completely leaves out the pirates. It leaves out the fact that there were entire towns in Scotland that were, the whole town disappeared in the night. And the same thing over on the east coast of the United States. Both the British and the Americans had entire towns disappear. The whole thing. Not the houses, not the horses, not the pigs, not the dogs, all of the people. Now, why were all of the people gone? That's because the Berber Corsairs and Barbary Corsairs, depending on what point in history, they were stealing us. A lot of people, they look at that area on a map and they go, "Oh, well, that's Africa. You know, they're probably just getting us back for the slave trade." No, these are Mediterranean pirates. They never stopped the slave trade. Also, this is Northern Africa. This isn't Central Africa. It's not Southern Africa. It's not that kind of Africa at all. The Muslims who live in that area, they're not native to the area. They're conquerors, just like Napoleon conquered Egypt. A lot of other countries actually conquered Egypt. During the Four Kingdoms period, like that was really Egypt's heyday. Then again, they were called Kemet at the time. The slave trade was mostly coming from South Africa. And we did have a lot of slave trade. The furthest north that there was any slave trading going on, though, was in what's called the Ivory Coast. And that was actually just a stopping point before coming across, because what you wanted to do was stay against land and then come across on what's called the trade winds. Here in America, we really do like to play a lot on sentiment and bringing up a lot of these ships, USS Constitution and stuff. Like, this is stuff that Americans remember. They just don't know shit about the Revolutionary War or the War of 1812. You ask the average American where Lexington Green is, and they're like, "What's that?" If you look at the First World War, again, it's a bunch of arguments between cousins. They are all descendants. The monarchy of Europe, all of them, and the monarchy of Russia, all of them, are all related to Queen Victoria. Literally, the dude in charge of Great Britain was a grandson of Queen Victoria. And the uh, German emperor, well, he's also, his name was Kaiser Wilhelm II. He was also a grandson of Queen Victoria. And then we've also got um, the Tsar of Russia at the time, and his name was Tsar Nicholas. And yeah, they're fucking cousins, for Christ's sake. How many millions of people died because three fucking cousins couldn't get along? They wanted to have a fucking popularity contest. They used human lives to get it. Poverty exists because rich people exist. Not just because rich people exist, but because people are stupid. If less than 1% of our population are rich people, it is not that difficult to say, hey, there's 99 of us. You're going to share. You did not earn all of that. You did not. If you lied and cheated your way into greater lands, here in America, we say you did great. You did wonderful. We live in the land of what? Is it the land of the free and the home of the brave? No, it's not. It's all about money. The El Cazador sinking. It's money. The Chesapeake getting attacked by the British, sparking the 1812 war. Yeah, that wasn't over the Chesapeake. Not even close. I'm sure y'all have heard of the word township. Township does not mean what you guys think it means. Township is a very specifically British term from a very specific time in history. That time in history, everybody knows about because it's Admiral Nelson's fucking Navy. Up to 60% of Admiral Nelson's Navy were impressed. Not as in, wow, we are so in awe of the Navy, but as in, all right, we're going to point guns at you. You're going to get on board our boats. If you're unruly, well, we got ways of dealing with you on the high seas. The laws are different. The Royals got their asses kicked in the Queen Anne's War, and they didn't want to have a repeat of that. But they just couldn't agree on the color of shit. Now, the French, after the British, really didn't send a whole lot of people over here to fight that war. First of all, their investment in the Revolutionary War was minimal. And their investment in the War of 1812 was even less. At the point that they stopped USS Chesapeake and killed 3 soldiers and injured 18 more, we were already at war with the British. We were already at war over pirates. It was the pirates down there in the Mediterranean where Admiral Nelson was fighting against the French. And you might not want to believe this, but Admiral Nelson had to strike up a deal with the Barbary pirates so that he could do that. He had to go get pirates' permission to fucking do that. The greatest admiral ever had to ask the permission of not only pirates, you guys are going to hate to hear this, but they were Muslim pirates. British Empire brought to its knees by pirates. The fledgling American nation brought to its knees by pirates. We went to war with each other because neither one of us could fucking fight the pirates. There was no way in hell. They were robbing us blind. And that has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of Europe did not acknowledge America as a nation. And a lot of African nations, while you guys want to believe that they have no power today, they do have some. But they had a lot more back then. Population centers did mean a lot more. Winning one battle did mean a lot more. That's what made the American War, the Revolutionary War, such a spectacular show of force, because we didn't really have a show of force. We had the British on the run because they were chasing us. They had to drop everything that they had to fucking chase us. So they're dropping their stuff everywhere they fucking go. They're dropping their cannons. They're dropping their heavy equipment. They're trying to keep up with us. And then we got dudes following behind and picking up all the gear the British are dropping off. Hot damn. That's a smart way to do it, ain't it? The American Revolutionary War was the greatest guerrilla war ever fought, bar none. The British had us beat from day one. And all we had to do was play the rope-a-dope. They got us on the ropes. They got us on the ropes. They got us on the ropes. And they just keep following you around the ring, don't they? When you look at World War I and World War II, we like to blame everything on the Germans and say that all of the terrible atrocities were performed by the Germans. But the Germans took their master plan from somewhere. For starters, the American Constitution, the 13th Amendment. That was the amendment that was enacted. They introduced it during the Civil War, at the very end of the Civil War. They introduced the 13th Amendment, which made it so that anyone who was convicted of a crime could be used as slave labor. That that hurts my pride for damn sure. They used a document that's supposed to be able to change, supposed to be able to adapt for the better for its citizens. And we're still dealing with the same royalty bullshit that we had before. We just happen to change it over to the merchant class. It used to be when we were under the control of the royals, you give us what we want. That's what the royals would tell us. You give us what we want. And that's how it was. You either gave them what they want or they had their soldiers kill you. Well, now we figured out a way to make a lot of money off locking people up and getting the public to pay for it. Woohoo! And we have a whole bunch of laws that are all centered around that. If they're not useful to society, we will lock them up and we'll make money off of them. And then there's the British. People don't want to remember that the British actually started the slave export and trade system with the United States. Queen Elizabeth, y'all know who that guy is, right? Or lady, I should say. She wasn't much of a lady, though, was she? No, she wasn't. And she had herself a famous pirate. Now, this wasn't one of the good pirates. This is one of the bad pirates. This is the guy who traded human flesh. He was disgusting. So we'll type this in here. Queen Elizabeth pirate. That's right. Admiral. You're going to recognize this name. Sir Francis Drake. Sir Francis Drake. 1540 to 28th of January of 1596. Was an English sea captain, privateer, naval officer, and explorer. Drake is best known for his circumnavigation of the world in a single expedition from 1577 to 1580. Are you sure Sir Francis Drake doesn't have anything to do with maybe the Spanish Armada? We'll have to see about that. Now, here, just below that, it says Pirate to Admiral, Sir Francis Drake. History Net. Pirate Admiral Sir Francis Drake, Sea Dog Francis Drake, battled, looted, and bought his way from Scourge of Spain to Queen Elizabeth's favorite commander. So let's ask the Google another question. We'll ask who was in charge of the English fleet against the Spanish Armada. Oh, damn. Let's look at this name right here, folks. Sir Francis Drake again. Off the coast of the Gravelines, France, Spain's so-called Invincible Armada is defeated by an English naval force under the command of Lord Charles Howard and Sir Francis Drake. Ooh. During World War II, a lot of American lives were lost because the British wanted to hold on to old colonies. They wanted to keep these colonies after the war. Many of these colonies by the Germans, when these folks were, for them, it was liberation. For many of these countries, it was liberation from the exact cruelty that we keep pointing out and saying, hey, look at what the Germans did to the Jews. We try to pretend that this is the first time there's ever been a mass genocide like that in history. It's not even close to the first. Look at the end of the Civil War. All right, look at how many black folks were made homeless immediately. You've got 4 million black folks in the South who are homeless. And the South, the first thing they start doing is looking at the 13th Amendment and going, all right, let's make homelessness illegal. And wham! Now, that's not counting the tens of thousands of black folks who are just straight up hung on the spot. Oh, we lost the war, hang all the slaves. I mean, it was disgusting. And the British, their history of this is fucking mortifying. Their treatment of their own soldiers, their treatment of people on the Indian, they call it the Indian subcontinent, but it's India. Oh my God. Holy fucking hell. The British Empire, even after they made slavery legal, and they made slavery legal, or slavery illegal, and they made slavery illegal a lot sooner than we did. Even after that, they didn't act as if it was illegal. We can still see examples to this day of slavery within the former British Empire. Some of these colony states still exist. They're still loyal to Great Britain as far as trade ties go. But with the end of World War II, America went and fought where Great Britain told us to. They said, hey, well, we know you want to really shove into Europe, but we need you to go over to Africa for us. The hell are you doing that for? Britain had us go over to almost all of their former holdings and reconquer them before they tried to do anything about France. Matter of fact, Eisenhower was so pissed off at the number of American troops that were being wasted in former British colonies where they just weren't fucking wanted. These people are being slaughtered by the thousands by British soldiers for, in some of these cases, hundreds of years When the Germans came in, the Germans were a lot nicer. But that's because the Germans they weren't booed, they weren't hated, they were treated as liberators. And a lot of people resented going over there and being like, all right, dude, fucking, we're pretty well in hostile territory. We have to fight harder to keep these cities or to take these cities even, because the local population is not on our side. They hate the British. They see us as allies of the British, and they think that we're going to torment them the same as the British. Not necessary. So America basically forced the British to make a compromise. They said, all right, we know you want Monty in there as the fucking head of everything, but we're sick of listening to Monty because he's a fucking idiot. Monty is a fucking moron, and America's not going to listen to a fucking moron. Now, there was a lot of battlefield experience that America still needed to learn about. I mean, look at the way that our tank brigades got fucking chewed up in North Africa. But then we got a saving grace out of that. We realized, holy shit, our artillery is fucking pounding the hell out of these German tanks. They're bringing new German tanks, and we're knocking them out as fast as they can throw them at us. Artillery. Holy shit, that's a nice fucking way to put it, ain't it? So then they had half tracks that had artillery pieces on top of them. And they went, you know what? I got a great idea. We're going to take those half tracks that got that artillery piece on top of them, and we're going to have them tow artillery pieces with an artillery crew for that piece. And when the tanks let us know where the enemy is, we're going to drop our artillery pieces and we're going to flank. And damn, that was an effective maneuver. America was basically able to keep a whole bunch of fucking Germans busy, just going, all right, well, now they're getting shot from three sides. They're going to have to retreat, come back in. And by the time they come back in, we're just going to move our troops. We got sick and tired of getting our asses kicked. And we also, well, we had George S. Patton, this little shrimp of a man with a friggin' meek-ass weak voice. And it was his tactics in North Africa that really turned the tide. And we like to give Monty a lot of credit, a whole lot more credit than he deserves. When the reality of the situation is that Winston Churchill and George S. Patton are, well, they're responsible for all of the major tank development from World War I forward. The tank was Winston Churchill's fucking brainchild. That was his baby. Lots of people had the idea. He's the dude who said, let's do it. George S. Patton was the first tank commander the United States ever had. He also led the very last cavalry charge that America was ever involved in against Pancho Villa's forces alongside John J. Pershing. The British lied to us a lot. They lied to our president a lot. Their entire motive was basically keeping what they had already. What they had already was never theirs to fucking begin with. They had no right and no place to rape all of those places of their resources or of their peoples. Part of the reason for the pirates stealing literally entire towns worth of people from the United States and from Great Britain is because they didn't see the United States as any different from Great Britain. We spoke the same language. We were basically the same people to them. They did not acknowledge the United States as its own country. And they hated the British. Why wouldn't they? A lot of those pirates were from a lot of different nations that actually joined up with the Muslims and said, hey, we'll help you. They've been coming in here and messing our shit up for years. Yeah, we will help you. We're on this. And Great Britain had to deal with pirates everywhere. They had to deal with those pirates, the Barbary Corsair pirates, and their the British at the time had square rigged ships, and the Mediterranean ships usually had a lateen sail or a triangular sail. Um, they could go completely different directions in the wind. They could almost go directly upwind. And that was something that the British later on started putting together in a lot of their fishing boats. But prior to that, it's basically a bunch of Viking square rigs, and you just put a few extra Viking square rigs on top of each other. That'll work. Not too innovative. And then there's the fact that the bureaucracy kept on getting in the way of progress. And the United States didn't have that fucking problem. The things the United States did when they constructed the USS Constitution and its sister ships, well, that's been copied worldwide. That framework to this day has been copied worldwide and is still copied worldwide in metal ships as well. The angular ribbing and all that, I mean, that's just, they were works of art. They really were. And British red tape made it so that you had the ribs that go straight up and down, and then you had the skin that goes around the outside. And pretty much everybody was at a stalemate as far as red tape went by that time, except for the United States and pirates, of course. Pirates and the United States were two groups of peoples who would take innovations from anywhere in the world and go, hey, if it makes it better, we'll take it. The British had stopped that by that point because they had gotten their own sense of superiority. They thought, well, we conquered all of the brown people, so we're smarter than all of the brown people, so we don't need to use any of the brown people's ideas. The United States, however, we had a lot of, brown people here. We worked together with the brown people. We learned a lot from the brown people, and we taught brown people a lot of stuff. When I say brown people, who am I referring to? Is there any specific group? Nope, I'm talking about anybody who's not white. 60% of our Navy in the Revolutionary War was black. 60% of our Navy in the War of 1812 was black. 60%. And then you fast forward to World War II, and you're looking at black people are allowed to be cooks. They're allowed to be janitors. And that's about it on a naval ship. Where did that come from? That came from Southern slave owners. All of the stuff that we're dealing with today comes from Southern slave owners. All of the ideas that we're dealing with, all of the manipulation we're dealing with, all of the evil that we're dealing with, that spread worldwide. And it didn't start in the South. I'm not saying that it started in the South. I'm saying that that last vestige of pure hatred and evil attached to what is supposedly the greatest nation on earth, supposedly the melting pot of society. And we have this giant fucking stain on our map. I'm not saying that there isn't racism elsewhere. I'm not saying that the frame of mind hasn't gotten stale. I'm saying that there has never before been such an actually educated, yes, the United States does give a lot of these folks free education. And also, in a lot of cases, it's not actually free, but they'll arrest you if you don't find a way to get your kids there. So your kids are going to get a fucking education. And for them to hold on to this ignorance of the South will rise again. What the hell are you talking about, son? Less than 1% of Southerners own slaves. Most Southerners prior to the Civil War could not afford a pair of fucking shoes. The South was run by that 1% of them assholes who were rich. And they went, hey, we don't need to industrialize. We've got slaves. Well, what about all those motherfuckers that don't have slaves? And what about the slaves themselves? The South got their asses kicked because they listened to the 1% of society that they should never have listened to. We can trace the lineage of our fucked up government all the way back to ancient Rome. We cannot trace it back to ancient Greece, not to Athens anyway, which is what we try to claim that American democracy is based on. It's not, it's capitalism straight up. And all monarchies are capitalist, every one of them. We pretend that capitalism is some new idea. Ripping people off is not a new idea. The British did it at gunpoint. Here in America, we just teach everybody to con each other. We make it against the law, but then we encourage it because it's literally the only way to make it. You have to con and manipulate, fucking lie and contort and cheat and do all sorts of immoral shit to get by in the United States. And then the whole world is under this impression that we got fucking 2 Maseratis in fucking every garage. Like, holy hell, dude. No, most of the United States lives under the poverty line. There's a bunch of stuff that you look at that we have and you go, hey, man, you know, you guys are really well off. Look at all the stuff that you got. You know, we don't have that stuff here. Or, hey, in the country that I'm from, you know, we have to do all this, 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 and this in order to do this, 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 and this with something like that. That's a fucking luxury. Oh my God, you threw away a plastic container? Shit, dude. We use that for getting water. And everybody starts slowly forgetting you can make a pitcher or a container out of fucking dirt. You can dig down the clay, take a little bit of time, fucking make it. But people lose those skills. We come to require aluminium because we don't know how to dig a hole or build a fire, or because we don't want to carry the extra weight. We don't want the extra burden. We want all of it right here, right now. And then there's the mass quantity of laws that make it illegal for us to do things that they can do in third world countries. There's a lot of third world countries where you can just go out and build yourself a house. The village will help you do it. You work together as a village. It's not just a village raises a child. It's the whole village looks out for everybody in the fucking village. It used to be like that in a lot of different places. There's also the fact that we keep trying to blame stuff on people who are alive today that didn't have nothing to do with it. The South, with all of those people who, yeah, their families didn't own slaves. They didn't. Now, you know, it's a lot of years later and a few generations, and some of those rich plantation owners have married people that weren't rich plantation owners. They've lost their fortunes or, you know, whatever. A lot of those rich plantation owners that held on, their families held on until the 1920s, 1930s. And then they lost everything in the stock market crash. Of course, at that point, you've got a bunch of people who came from a family lineage of owning slaves, but now they're in the fucking trailer park too. And their kids are going to be raised in that trailer park, not knowing jack shit about a fucking plantation. And there's all these poor people there that don't want to pay any attention to the fact that racism is still rampant. And that's not the part that they're ignoring. They're ignoring the fact that you want to get butthurt over getting your ass kicked when you didn't get your ass kicked. You didn't. No Southerner alive today fought in the Civil War. No Northerner alive today fought in the Civil War. This whole the South will rise again thing. Like, you guys really want to hold a grudge this long over a bunch of rich assholes? Jefferson Davis enacted the draft. When he enacted the draft, it made it so that every Southerner between the age of 14 and 40 was a soldier. Everyone. But they didn't have the infrastructure for a sustained war. They also didn't count on General Grant being so heartless and callous towards the slave population. Part of their idea during the Civil War was that, hey, we're going to drag the North down by letting them have a whole bunch of slaves. We're going to let those slaves get to Grant's army, and that way we can slow him down and keep him from whooping our asses as badly as he's doing. And he was cold-blooded. He was a cold-blooded son of a bitch. He also had absolutely zero regard for the lives of black individuals. None. And that actually had a lot to do with General Lee signing that piece of paper at Appomattox Courthouse, surrendering his troops. See, although Lee was fighting for the side that were the slave owners, Lee was a gentleman. He couldn't bring himself to do that cold-hearted shit that fucking Grant did. Lee couldn't even do those things to black people. General Lee could not bring himself to kill black people or to let them starve to death even. I mean, here's a guy who's in the South, and Grant is basically signing the death warrant of thousands of black individuals, slaves trying to get north. He won't arm them. He won't give them a rifle. He doesn't trust them because they're black. Grant was a piece of shit. He was kind of our version of Napoleon. He was a. We're glad we won the war, right? That's the part that's important. We won the war. But we didn't get rid of slavery, though, did we? These very same black folks. No, they're not the very same black folks, are they? They're the descendants of. Sorry about that. Antique thinking, same as we all are. Antique thinking. Black folks and white folks today, male, female, doesn't even matter what religion, we are all victimized today by the same system After the Civil War, people were fine with, well, we'll make homelessness illegal and we can use that against black folks. But then again, they didn't make it legal just for black folks. They didn't write the color down into law at all. It was just a snub to the face and an insinuation. Of course, that got used for throwing away anybody who was considered undesirable, anybody who was homeless. If nobody would give you a job because you were mentally ill, back on a chain gang. To this day, the 13th Amendment still exists in the United States. It is still used to victimize homeless from one end of the continent to another. Unbelievable, you know? I love the Constitution. I don't love it in its entirety. There's a lot of stuff in the Constitution I am against, like the 13th Amendment. It should be gone. That gives people too many incentives in the form of dollar signs, too much incentive to victimize the most victimized people in America, the most easy to victimize people in America. When I say we live in a disgusting country, I mean it. Elizabeth's line is typed, many people are ignorant about history. And then she typed sea dogs. And then she typed, yes, Sir Francis Drake was authorized by Queen Elizabeth. That's right. The very first slave trade from Africa to the United States with African slaves was commissioned by Queen Elizabeth, the savior of the British Empire. That's just funny. On the bright side, she was no Mary Queen of Scots. Even back then, same as now, it's a bunch of fucking rich assholes who are all related to each other and all fucking using your lives to try to one up each other. Fucking stupid. I want you guys to look up another famous ship, the Vasa, Vasa. It's an interesting history, and it'll show you how much the monarchy, all the way back then, just didn't give a shit. Most of British history is proof that the British people are just as stupid as everybody else. We're refined. We don't duck. Our officers don't duck. Duck, duck, goose. I don't know if you guys play Duck, Duck, Goose over there in the UK. I think I'm going to get back to watching my documentary. It's on the War of 1812. It's missing everything about the pirates. We try to wipe them from history. The Brothers of the Coast, when they would take over a merchant ship, they would give everyone on that ship the chance to join their crew. And if they didn't want to join the crew, they didn't have to leave on the ship that they came on. That was probably becoming a prize ship. You would be set a cast and somewhere that was close enough to land that you could row to somewhere and get to land. That was pretty decent at the time, especially given how the British especially, were treating pirates at the time. Most of the crews of the Brethren of the Coast were a mix of about every nationality that there is. There were people from Asia. You could have people who were from Asia, people who were from France, people who were from Spain, people who were Dutch, people who were all on the same ship, all on a ship that used to be British. And each and every one of those people gets to vote. Piracy in the Caribbean reached its peak in the 1720s. That was far before America ever declared its independence as a nation. Just long enough for those pirates to become romanticized in American lore. Their stand against all three of the great empires of the world, or at least what we considered great empires of the world. They got their asses taken down, almost taken down by pirates in the 1720s. Almost tore all three monarchies down to the point where they were completely bankrupt. And then again, they did it again. War of 1812 almost bankrupted the United States and Great Britain. Luckily for them, France had already bankrupted itself. All this stuff in history is interrelated. It all has an effect on our future. Those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. And history is all in the past, is it not? Those laws that were made in the past that continue to be used to victimize people to this day. To say I should not speak up against it or do something about it is completely fucking ludicrous. That's an antique way of thinking. The idea that people should be forced to serve others. I live my life in the service of others, but I choose who I serve. I also pay attention to where a lot of this stuff comes from because a lot of it comes from obscurity. The War of 1812, most of y'all don't know shit about that. A lot of people are like, yeah, we whooped the British asses twice. Oh, no, not really. We were fighting against not the B team, not the C team, but the D team. We were fighting in the Revolutionary War against, well, not a whole hell of a lot compared to what the British Empire could have sent to us. And in the War of 1812, they were so busy fighting against Napoleon, and Napoleon was whooping their asses. They really didn't have any troops to send over here. Also, we built 6 extremely, maddeningly fucking badass ships. And we still retain the bootleggers. Most of our supplies in the War of 1812, same as in the Revolutionary War, it was bootleggers. We erase the parts of history that we don't want to think about, remember, or hear. Right now, with this whole South will rise again, when most of the South was too poor to own shoes, let alone a slave, and they want to blame black folks for that. Oh, I am thankful for every single Northern soldier who laid down his life. I am thankful for them. I am thankful for the Union Army. I am thankful for the fact that they fought for freedom. I'm just jaded by the fact that they laid down their lives, and at the end of the war, they said, all right, well, now we're just going to make it legal for everybody to be a slave of the United States government. Well, fuck that. I'm not your slave, motherfucker. You tell me it's against the law for me to defend myself. But here I've been for the last 4 years defending myself. Just because you tell me I can't doesn't mean I'm not gonna. You are not God. You were not ordained by God. God did not put you where you are. You fucking weaseled your way to the top, just like every other motherfucker in our government. You don't get to be at the top of a capitalist society unless you're a fucking weasel. And that goes for the monarchies as well.